Hello boys and girls, Lord Hawkeye here again, and welcome again to Mindcraft, where we seek higher understanding of the gaming world at large. Well, as a being who thrives on the irrational rage of others, let's talk about sexism today. And this was brought on by a cracked article I read called The Most Sexist Superhero Costumes, and there was a follow-up to it that had a couple good points, but was really just silly. I mean, when you're saying that defining your terms and doing homework on the subject matter makes you a loser, I'm afraid we've got nothing to talk about there. But it is a subject I'd like to address. And, of course, let's first get a definition down so nice and clear. Sexism is, exactly as the name would imply, discrimination based on gender. If you believing either race is inferior in some way or something along those lines, that is sexist. Okay, so with that in mind, here's where I take issue with some people who rally against so-called sexist costumes and things like that. First of all, a lot of these people are guilty of not taking context into account when they rally against these sorts of things, and which causes a whole lot of confusion. Because one thing that needs to be understood is sexism can be in stories or in a setting, but that doesn't necessarily convey sexist attitudes on the part of the writer. Such as if you're writing about writing in a time period where sexism is normal, that doesn't make the writer sexist. He's simply accurately reporting what things are like in that time. In fact, it would be dishonest to remove all sexism from the subject matter. But here's a more basic example of context here. Let's take two characters, Duke Nukem from the Duke Nukem games and Sam Stone from the Serious Sam games. Both characters are total meatheads who treat women like objects and all that sort of nasty stuff. However, the subject material is handled much differently in either case. In Duke Nukem's case, Duke Nukem is played off as someone who is cool, someone who is to be admired. And thus, that does make the Duke Nukem games somewhat sexist in that sense, because they play off his behavior as being something admirable. In the case of Serious Sam, it's quite the contrary. Sam is played off as an idiot who is to be ridiculed. So, while it's the same type of character in both cases, the message is totally different. Duke Nukem, sexism is something to be admired. Sam Stone, sexism is something to be ridiculed. And this makes a vast difference, so always be sure to take that into account before you go rallying the troops. And my other problem is that when you go rallying merely against costumes, you're missing a bigger picture, I find. Because when they say beauty is only skin deep, well, it works the other way too. Just because a character looks really sexualized and all that sort of thing, that doesn't necessarily convey a sexist attitude. Because really, if you judge a character purely by that and not by the character they actually are, I'm afraid that kind of makes you the materialistic one here. Just an idea. Here's a good example, if you'll forgive the shameless plugging. My own comic, the main character, the superhero Dolly, does have very exaggerated features, to put it nicely. It's partly just how the artist draws, and yes, she's supposed to look like that because she's a doll who talks and all that sort of thing, so she's supposed to look idealized. But anyway, that's not important. I've had some people raise an eyebrow about that. They say, "Oh, isn't that kind of sexist?" They say, "How so? I don't play her off as being inferior because she's a woman. In fact, her character herself, she's very compassionate. She's very witty and all that sort of thing. And while she's a timid girl at heart, she manages to find a strength within her and become a hero. I don't find that to be very demeaning to women. I find that quite the contrary." Now compare this to another case. There was a game called Metroid Other M, which is a great example of why Nintendo doesn't let other companies use their characters very often. Samus in this game, well, in previous games, Samus was always played off as being a very independent bounty hunter sort of person, but since she never talked, it was very hard to get a real gauge on her character. This was the first game where she actually talked, so people were looking forward to getting more insight into her character. Unfortunately, they did not do her justice in this game. She's played off as a completely over-emotional, male-dependent ditz in this game, and this was not very well received with fans. In fact, the change in her character was so unnecessary and contemptible, it pretty much drowned out the rest of the gameplay and everything. No one even cared about the gameplay. Just her character was so badly treated that that's all everyone criticized about this game, and rightfully so. So, I think we can take some good news out of this. That fans are not sexist in general, because in examples like that of real, genuine sexism, fans don't tend to react well to it. Like, they absolutely hated the treatment Samus's character got in Metroid Other M. Or there was a part in the newest Duke Nukem game where he makes what's effectively a rape joke, and it was considered one of the lowest parts of the whole game. So, when people let skimpy costumes and stuff like that slide, it's not because they're sexist, it's because they understand that sort of thing doesn't really matter. What really matters is characterization and the attitudes conveyed by a writer. And that is the sort of thing that does get fans riled up. So, I take to heart that at least it shows me that most fans do have their priorities in check, which I find very encouraging. The other problem that some people seem to have is that why video games and other media like that seem to appeal to boys more than girls. And they say, oh, it's because of sexism. There was a post I saw recently that explained this perfectly. It was on a forum for that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic show. I've never actually watched it, so I can't comment either way on how the show is. But someone asked one of the creators, how does it feel to know that your show is now being watched by creepy guys or something like that? I don't remember his exact wording, but it was very derogatory towards the bronies, as they're called, male fans of the show. And the guy answering just gave the best answer ever. He said that that this kind of attitude is the reason why the girls don't get marketed towards as much as boys by the popular medias. Because boy material, if a girl looks at boy material, like video games and comic books and things like that, no one's a problem. But it doesn't work the other way around. If a guy looks at girly material, oh, everyone comes down on him, makes fun of him, puts him down, and says, oh, that's so creepy. So it's not a question of sexism, it's just a question of marketing. Do you market something towards boys that girls are going to look into anyway, or do you market something towards girls that boys are socially considered off limits to? I think the choice is pretty clear. So I hope this helps clarify the issue. And before you go screaming sexism, there's really no reason to get upset about things like that, unless you have reason to believe there's real, genuine hatred behind it. If it's just all in good fun, then just roll with it. No reason to get upset. At least that's my take on the matter. And that's all I got to say about that. Until next time, be aware and be wise.